Hello everybody, welcome back. This is part 17 of the Tamiya Mosquito build. And for those of you that saw the video that I posted last week, I think it was last Thursday, you'll know that I ran into problems with the model. They were all my own fault. I managed to have some paint peel on me when I was coming to do the masking for the national insignia. I'd had the week before some tear off of the paint when I was doing the masking for the side of the fuselage as well, and that should have warned me really that I was going to run into problems. What I had to do was to strip the affected areas right the way back. The difficulty was that the paint was chipping off in fairly large chunks, and that meant that I was going to be getting a ragged edge to the paint surface when I came to repaint it. So what I had to do was remove the paint to a point where the primer coat had adhered to the plastic, and there was quite a lot to remove. So it's certainly a lot more than the actual tear that I'd made. And to remove the old paint, I used some isopropyl alcohol on a cotton bud, and just using a swirling action like that, just to remove the paint until I got to a point where rather than flaking, I was just getting a nice graduated finish into the existing paintwork. And when I got to that point, I knew that subsequent primer coats and top coats would be blended in nice and smoothly with the rest of the paint finish. It was a long, tedious process, and in fact on the fuselage where I'd had problems, I had to remove the paint right up to the rear of the wing and right back to the fin as well. So a lot of paint to remove and having to repaint the model as well. But that's all done now, and I have gone ahead and painted all the national insignia, mainly using the Montex masks. So what I'm going to do in this episode is show you exactly how I used the Montex masks eventually to get the national insignia on. I did actually use some C-type roundel decals for the fuselage roundels, and I'll explain why I did that as we get into the video. So let's get into it, and I'll show you how I got the model to this stage. Okay, so let's make a start then. You can see that I've already done the starboard wing roundel here, and for that I used the Montex Mask to paint that on, and I was okay this time. I had no problem at all with the paint lifting because I'd prepared this wing and painted it properly. I cleaned the wing and made sure that the camouflage scheme went down as it should. So no problems there, and I hopefully won't have any problems now on the rest of the aircraft. You can see I've already fitted the starboard C-type roundel. The one on the wing is a B-type. This C-type is actually a decal from an extra decal sheet. And what I had to do, it was a 48 scale sheet, and what I had to do was do a conversion of the sizes on the 48 scale sheet and upscale it for a 132 scale. The conversion, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll put it at the bottom of the screen just so that you know which one I use, because it wasn't possible. I'm not aware of any 132 scale aftermarket roundel sheets. You obviously get a set of roundels in a 132 scale aftermarket set for the Mosquito, but you'd have to buy the whole set just for a couple of roundels, which I wasn't going to do. So I decided to use just this one, and the reason I used the C-type roundel on the fuselage was because I wasn't convinced that the Montex masks would deal very well with this rib along the fuselage side. And I knew that the extra decals would fit really well, and it's proved to be the case. That's gone down really nicely over that rib. It's nice and tight. And the only problem you've got if you're mixing painting and decals is to match up the colours, obviously. And to get the correct colours to match, I've used some Mr. Hobby paint. So the blue is FS15044. This is actually for the American Thunderbirds aircraft, the display team. But it's the proper very dark blue for the RAF roundel. That's the proper FS code for it. For the red, I've used again Mr. Hobby acrylic colour red brown. This is H47, and as you can see, it's actually a kind of brick red colour, and it does match pretty well with the extra decal red on there. So we're not going to have any trouble with matching. Those two paints match very well. So I'm going to move on and do the port wing now. I did the starboard wing first because there's a better reference for the starboard wing. We've got a couple of panels here on the wing that the roundel butts right the way up to, so that gives us the correct position of the roundel, and we can copy that on the port wing. The port wing doesn't have those two little panels on it, but we can match it to size now. We've got the starboard one on. So this is the Montex Mask. You can see it, I've used it for the starboard side. It's lost some of its tack, which I'm not bothered about because it'll just make the removal of these masks a bit safer, given the problems I've had with paint lifting. This is the actual mask that we'll end up using, but this insert just helps us to position the roundel in the correct place. So that's okay in that position. I'm happy with that. Now that I know that that's where the roundel's going to end up, I can now put the actual mask over it. And when you're positioning these Montex masks, I find the best way to do it is just to let them fall. If you try and pull them and push them around, you end up distorting them, so you get a shape other than a circle, which is what we're after, obviously. So just let it fall naturally onto the wing. And when we know that's in position, you can remove the shadow mask if you like. The slightly difficult thing to do here is to get the Montex mask to conform to this panel, which I think is the aileron actuator panel. It doesn't conform perfectly, but if we're careful how we use this airbrush, we shouldn't get anything going underneath that. I'll just extend the extent of the mask using a bit of paper. Okay, so there we are, we're ready to go with that. And I'm going to start off by just filling in the centre of the roundel with the red, and then I can put a circle over the top of that, like that, in order to spray the blue. But we'll start off with the red. So we're using the Mr. Hobby H47 red brown for this one, and I'm using it neat out of the bottle. Gives a good match straight out of the bottle. Let's get the red on then. So I'm using actually my Badger Chrome Renegade. and that's because I've got a problem with my Harder and Steenbeck, the normal airbrush that I use for jobs like this. But I appear to have damaged the needle on it, so it's not spraying properly. So I've had to resort to this backup. I normally use this just for metallics, but it's had a thorough clean to make sure I don't get any traces of metallic chippings, if you like, into the standard paint finish. So let's get this red on. So I've just got the red in the centre and I've just feathered it out towards the edge. I haven't gone right the way up to the edge of the mask there. Obviously that's going to be in blue. So that's just enough to do the job for the centre. So that red has dried now. I'm now just going to put the blue mask on now. Just loosely like that, and that will give me the position of the mask for the red, and that just makes sure that the red circle ends up right in the middle of the roundel. Take the blue mask off. And we're ready to go again. Take the masks off now. Just do it gently. I'm still wary of lifting this paint, even though it's been redone. I've got a little bit of overspray here on the back where it's had to go over this fairing, but I can sort that out. We'll touch that up. So that's come out pretty well, and apart from this slight touch up that I've got to do at the back, I think that looks okay. I'll just fix this misting here that I've got of the blue where this fairing is. Just to touch it in a bit. It's a bit too much. I don't think even under some weathering that's not going to disappear, so I will fix that, but that won't take long. And then as soon as I've done that, I'll just put a coat of gloss varnish. I'll just mist a little bit of gloss varnish over the top of that, just to blend it in and protect it. I don't want to scratch it or scuff it now. And then we can go on to the next step, which will be the fin flashes. Okay, I've masked the area of the fin flash off here, and I've used the Montex Mask to do that, rather than using the Montex Mask itself, because it's vinyl and I found it difficult to get it to conform to the bottom of the fin fillet. So I've used the Montex Mask as a template, really, just to use some ordinary masking tape and some paper just to extend the borders of the mask. And I'm going to start off by applying some white for the centre band. So I'll apply the red next. Just got a bit of overspray there. It's where actually I had a little blast of paint come out of the airbrush and it's just gone on a bit thick and gone underneath. I've also got a bit over here where I haven't masked it off properly. So that's going to need tidying up as well. But generally they've come out pretty good. I'm fairly happy with those. Okay, we'll put the aircraft serial number on now. I've already put the port side on, so I'll use that as a reference to get the starboard side lined up properly. So I just want to put a marker just at the front. It's pretty awkward to line these up because the Mosquito fuselage is so smooth and featureless at this point, with no camouflage at all to have a reference by. Just checking from all directions to make sure the serial numbers are lined up equally on both sides of the fuselage. We mustn't forget the little circle in the middle of the 9. Okay, we'll get these serial numbers painted now. So I've applied the Montex Mask and I've just been careful here to make sure that it's aligned with the mask that I placed on the port side. The port side one is a little bit easier to place because you've got the reference of the camouflage scheme. The green demarcation identifies the position of the serial number at that point, but not on the starboard side. It's a very plain fuselage, so it's difficult to match up. I've just got some Tamiya matte black here. So I think we've got the correct sort of coverage there. Let's see how this works. That is extremely satisfying. It's much better than using the decal, I think. The next sequence is to fit the port side roundel, and then finally we'll do the Squadron Codes at the end. Extra decals go on nicely with a little bit of microset, and I don't think I'll need any sol on this, not on a smooth surface. It's perfectly smooth. So that's settled down perfectly well. I don't need to do any more with that, I don't think. I'm not going to bother with any microsol. I'll just check it in 20 minutes or so just to make sure that it's got rid of all the tiny little crinkles. So I don't think that's going to need any more now. It's gone down very smoothly, as you'd expect on this perfectly smooth fuselage. So I'm not going to have any difficulties with that, I don't think. Just a last check before I leave it. That looks fine. So I'm going to leave that alone. When the decal's dried completely, so I'll leave that overnight actually now, and I'll come back in the morning, do the Squadron Codes using the Montex masks, and then we can apply the stencils. So the port side Squadron Codes here, it's quite tricky actually to get these positioned exactly where you want them, and I've taken these off once or twice because they were in the wrong place, and now the adhesion's going a bit on it, so I better get it painted. I'm using Mr. Colour RAF Sky for the codes, so I'll just mist this on. Okay, let's see how we did. I'm afraid that we might have a bit of overspray here. The mask didn't go down too well. Oh, it's a bit of a surprise. It's come out perfectly. Oh, I'm happy with that. Looks good. And where we've got a very tiny suggestion of a ragged edge, I'm not bothered about that at all, because when you look at photographs of this particular aeroplane, in fact, you can see that the Squadron Codes, they look as though they've been brush painted really. So they would have been brush painted, I think, over masks, just like I've done. So you would have got that, you can see on the photographs, the slightly ragged edge on those. So I'm really happy with those. I'll get the aircraft code on next, the F just ahead of the roundel, then we'll have a look at the other side. So the aircraft code I've put in position there, and that again just helps me position the actual mask. Just going to protect the decal with some paper. I don't want to pull that up. So now I've got the slightly more tricky task of doing the starboard side, and that's because of this rib that runs along. Okay, so I think that's turned out pretty well, really. I'm happy with those. Okay, so time to fit some stencils now. So these are the Barracuda Cals stencils. These are printed by Cartograph, so I'm not expecting any problems with them. There's quite a few, as you can see, so we'll make a start. I'm not going to cover all of these, obviously, in the video. I'll just put one or two on, then I'll go off camera, fit the rest, and we'll come back at the end and see what the airplane looks like with all the markings applied. So what I'm going to do, the most dreaded decal on a Mosquito are the keep off markings over the radiator covers. So I'm going to dive straight in and tackle those first. So I'll be using microset, and maybe I'll need a bit of microsol on these particular decals, but I'm not expecting to use an awful lot of that. At this stage I'm just popping the top engine cowling off. I don't want to encroach onto that with this decal, so I'll remove it now. It's nice to see that there's no overspray in there, so we got away with that. I'll have to be careful with this because I managed to split it, which is a bit careless. So plenty of microset on the surface. Let's very carefully slide this off. Well, that's strange, it's breaking up. We've got a problem here. Okay, so it's no point struggling with that. I've taken it off. I'm going to try just one more. I'll try another one, but I'm going to have to get a replacement set, I think. They're not really settling down. I think they're probably old. I did get them when I got the kit, so it's a good few years now. So I'm not going to risk it with these. I'll get another new set and hopefully they'll settle down a little bit better. But they don't appear to have any glue on them. So I've got a bit of a problem with these, I think. It might have been my fault that the large keep-off decal broke up. Might have handled it a bit roughly, I don't know, but the smaller stencils just don't appear to be settling down onto the paint surface at all. And I'm just worried that they're going to be silvering, so for the price of them, I'm just going to get another set. Okay, so there we are. All the national insignia is applied. It's a shame that I couldn't go ahead this week and get the stencils all fitted, but I didn't want to push my luck with those original Barracuda stencils. I think they would have silvered, and I don't want to take the chance with the model, so I'm just going to wait for a couple of days to get a new set, and we'll take it from there in the next episode. I do like the way that the Montex masks have worked for the aircraft codes, for the Squadron Codes. The aircraft serial as well on the side here looks much better painted on, I think. So overall, it's been a bit of a mixed week. I've made some good progress in one way, but the problem with the stencils has slowed me down again this week. But with a model like this, there's a lot of expense and a lot of time gone into it, and I want to make sure that it's right. So I didn't want to push on when I was already struggling with those Barracuda decals. So I'm going to wait for those to arrive, for the replacement set to arrive. I'll crack on and apply them. I'm not going to go through the whole process of applying stencils. You'll have seen that before. I'll just probably cover the application of the main no tread panels on top of the wings here, and one or two others, but that's all I'll cover in the next episode. In that episode, I'm hoping to get the matte coat on and get some of the doors applied, and let's see how far we get in that next one. So that next part, part 18, I'll be publishing a week on Friday, because this week, for the rest of this week, apart from getting the stencils and those little bits of pieces of work finished, I want to do some work on the Bismarck. I've got some preparation to do on that. The 1/200 scale Bismarck, the next naval build, I announced that yesterday. And I just want to do a bit of organising in the shed to make sure that I'm ready to start that in the next week or two. So that's it for now. I'll get some photographs of the work that I've done this week so you can see it a bit more close up. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.